You are listening to episode 293 of the Game Deflators Podcast. My name's John, and I'm joined by Ryan.
Hey, everybody, here at the Game Deflators Podcast, we like to talk about games. We've recently picked up games we're currently playing, and we want it to go away. It burns us in this week's Inflation Deflation Challenge.
So you can probably guess we are playing the Lord of the Rings Gollum on this week's episode on the PlayStation 5. We'll get into it, but I had a decent time. You know, it was all right.
I mean, for what we were exposed to, we got off light. I went back and watched some reviews after, but yeah, we'll talk about that a little later on. Today, we're going to start off. We're getting ready for Crit Hit Con next week, and we're having another chat with our friend Jim. Then Democracy is on the line as Helldivers 2 enlistment plummets. And finally, today we're going to take a look at the future of physical media and Sony's recent announcements and how that all might pan out for us.
Good stuff. And then, of course, you can find us on thegamedeflators.com, our currently out-of-date website. Dude, I've been sick for like a couple weeks now, so I have not messed up our website whatsoever. But I'll have to when we get our new branding in here.
I know.
So that'll be kind of fun.
Lots of messing.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of messing around. You can also find us on social media at Game Deflators on X, at The Game Deflators on Instagram, Facebook, and Threads. You can also find us on YouTube, catch some stuff on there, including some overall videos of playthroughs and old podcast episodes, unboxings that we've done, things of that nature. So a lot of fun stuff. And then you're listening to a podcast on a podcast application. We're on all major podcast apps. Leave us a 5-star review, leave us a comment, like, subscribe, all of that good stuff. We would greatly appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right. Pickups. All right, Ryan. I had South Park on the list, but I was like, South Park or Jedi Fallen Order on the PS5. And I had to go with Jedi Fallen Order on that one.
Well, maybe it'll get cheaper and we can get it and play it for Christmas.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, during Christmas time, it'll be a Christmas present to myself to play South Park. That's what we'll do.
There we go.
Yeah, it's South Park Snow Day, I think is what it's called. So, yeah, I mean, it was $15, but yeah, we'll see.
Fallen Order is definitely a better buy.
Well, and Fallen Order, like for PS5, I hadn't seen it that low before. And my test is usually like, I'll go on Amazon, for example, and GameStop and eBay. I'll say, okay, Amazon's got for $20. All right, cool. What's it going for in other places? Best Buy happened to have for 20 instead of Walmart. It had never been that low. It'd been that low for PS4, but not PS5. And so yeah, I bought it off Amazon, but I went on eBay, and eBay it's still chilling at like $25 to $30 for a new copy, and like $19 used. So I was like, okay, like this makes sense. Like the game is not going down significantly in price. Whereas other games, you know, you'll go on and you're like, oh, that looks like a good deal on X website. And you get on eBay and it's like $15 less, $10 less, whatever it may be. And it's like, okay, so it's not that good of a deal for a new copy unless you want it new. So Fallen Order made sense for me. I've been looking forward to playing that one. It makes sense to buy it on PS5. So that's what I did there. And then I also pre-ordered all of the new D&D books. So alternate covers for the Player's Handbook, the Dungeon Master's Guide, as well as the Monster Manual for the new versions that are coming out. So those come out, I think, in September, November, and like February of 2025. So September of this year, November this year, and then Feb 2025. I want to say February 2025 is I want to say it's the Monster Manual that comes out then. And I'm guesstimating on like the November one. I think it's around that time frame. That would be the DM guide, and then the Player's Handbook, of course, comes out prior. Somebody would say like, why do you need it? I don't, but I have all the 5th edition books, and then, you know, it made sense for me to pick up like whatever's new, so I could read whatever new rules are in place.
Reprints with like addenda added.
There's some other stuff added. Like I think there's new spells that have been added to the books. As far as I recall, the Monster Manual I think has some new monsters added in. So is it critical for me to have this? Pun intended. No, not at all. But like I said, I got the other books. I like the artwork. That's kind of the big thing for me is the artwork. And the pre-orders are cheaper, right? So like instead of spending I think they normally go for like $60. I got a website I go on all the time. I get them for like 35.
Are
And
they
since there's
doing
two of them,
variants?
what's that?
Are they doing variant covers?
Yeah, this is alternate covers I'm getting.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the main reason I got it. And then down the road, I'll probably like Amazon will usually have like whatever new player's handbook comes out for like $20. If I really wanted to get like a beat up type of copy, I can do that. But yeah, so that's what I did for those. And then as far as what I'm playing right now, we finally beat Princess Peach Showtime last night. Not my favorite. Like it was fun for the most part. I actually overestimated on levels. Like I thought there was like 10 floors. Turns out there's only 5 of 20 levels, but then there's 10 levels that you play in addition to that in like a basement section that makes it a total of 30. For me, I think it was more just like it was monotonous
Mm-hmm.
is what it kind of came down to. Like the game overall was like fun in what we were playing, but you kind of found yourself doing like the same types of things for every single level, and there wasn't a ton of differentiation. It wasn't very challenging. It's a very kid-centric game, and that's fine, right? But it's just not the type of game that I would typically want to play. uh so yeah, it wasn't my favorite. The platforming was okay, it wasn't the best. There was a lot of weird things, like when you play as a ninja and you're going through the grass and you're holding something up, like that to me is just not, it's like okay, but it's just so simplistic in terms of gaming that playing it over and over again, like the same levels, is like, okay, like this is a bit much. And you overall play like each type of costume, like I think it's like 3 or 4 times that you play each costume. So yeah, I
What's your favorite?
what was my favorite costume? The kung fu costume, I think, was my favorite. That one because it was a little more action packed in those areas because you're actively kicking enemies and doing platforming and uh, going through bars and spinning and going to different areas. Like that to
It's a
me
little
was the
more
most
active.
challenging. Yeah, it was a little more active. Whereas like my least favorite was probably the Detective Peach, because you're literally just going around talking and then being like, uh, what's it called? I forget what the term was, but basically like you're it's using starts with an I. I don't remember. Either way, you're trying to figure out if like somebody committed a crime, if somebody's hiding, if they're, behind like is a stolen painting behind like this wall or something type of thing. And intuition is what it is. So you use like an intuition meter, like aha, and you either lose health or you don't based on the intuition that you're doing. And so it got to a point where like on the last version of using Detective Peach, we're sitting there and you have 4 options to figure out who the true detective is. And um, they're like, oh, you got to talk to every single person. I'm looking at the screen, like, it's that one. It's the one on the third from the left. And my wife's just like, how do you know? I'm like, it's the only one that is not moving. Like all of the other characters are actively moving. Like I know it's that one. So she talks to all the characters, and sure enough, that one character's like, you know, says something completely different than all 3 of the others that you immediately knew. You're like, yep, that's one. She's like, yeah, you were right. Like it makes sense now that you've kind of pointed that out. Um, so yeah, wouldn't recommend it unless it was like a bargain bin, to be honest. We used a gift card that she got, so as a giveaway at her work. So we didn't put any money into it, and I'm kind of happy we didn't. So it's gonna sit on the shelf. But if you ever want to play it, Ryan, you're welcome to it. And then I have continued with Alundra. So I have finished the reptile layer dungeon, which was very interesting. Actually, kind of difficult for, in terms of the dungeons. Most of these dungeons they've had, the platforming is the biggest pain in the ass. This one had like a lot going for it. I mean, there was various puzzles tied into it. There was a lot of fighting, a lot of platforming. I felt it was the most challenging, and then the boss battle was insane. You're playing against like Reptilius Maximus, I think was the name of the reptile god that was in this dungeon. And at the same time, you had like 6 enemies that were also trying to hit you, like other reptiles that were spawning infinitely through the battle. So it's like I had to balance like trying to dodge all these enemies while hitting the boss. And then, oh, by the way, once he hits 50% health, he starts to heal himself. So you're like actively trying to put pressure on this boss in a, action combat type of style, not turn-based combat. And it took me a while to beat that boss. I went in initially with like no health, and I was like, okay, I gotta go like buy some health herbs and stuff, and picked up those health herbs, and I had like 10 of those plus like a tonic and all these other things to try and beat this boss. And I finally did last night, and decided to go back into the town of Inoa to learn that there is yet again somebody else who's having a nightmare that is, of course, bad news for this town and is going to require me to jump into their nightmare and try and rescue them. So that is where we are right now. Talk about monotony, right? Like it's just, it's the same thing over and over again. The difference being is that at least every single level is different from the most part, offers its own set of unique challenges. You are picking up various weapons along the way. So there is that, and then you're building up your health as well. So, there's at least some elements of the game that really kind of help it out and help it shine on its own. But it is definitely not my favorite. And I don't know if I'm going to play number two because I've heard that one's worse. So,
Really?
yeah. But your turn.
Yeah. So this week, we got Still Lies the Deep. It just came out for Game Pass. It's a really creepy horror game. It's set in the ocean off of Scotland, and you're on an oil rig. You are kind of running away from a problem back on the mainland. And as you're going through your morning, kind of meeting and talking with your crewmates on board, you get called up to talk to the supervisor for the rig. And then after a short time, something happens. They drill into something at the bottom of the ocean that they weren't supposed to run into. And it's very, very much like the Thing kind of horror. Like there's some sort of swirling, inky, living tissue starting to tear its way and make its home inside of the oil rig, and it's possessing and mutating the crew members. And it's very much just a like sneak around and throw objects to make noise kind of game. But it's got lots of, like back against the wall as you're crawling along a ledge looking down into the ocean below, trying to go, get the jennies back on, or, whatever, circle back to some other location. I don't think it's that long of a game, but we're probably, I don't know, probably like 5 or 6 hours in. Um, it's really fun though. We're liking it a lot. The graphics are great. I mean, for a Game Pass drop, this is like exactly what I would be wanting. Um, so again, just another situation where Game Pass really pays off and gives me the, advantage of not actually having to buy these games, because I can't really be buying all kinds of games right now. So we're really liking that. I have not had time to play any Paper Mario this week, but we did go. We were waiting to play. Okay, so it says the game takes 4.5 hours to beat, so maybe we're less into it than I thought, or maybe
Or
we're
you're too into it.
almost at the end. But we were waiting to play that one night, but we wanted to watch. My wife wanted to show me this new music video that just came out, and it was going to drop in like a half hour. I was like, well, I don't really want to like start this horror game and then pause and then watch like a poppy video and then go back. So we started playing a short hike for a little bit, and I've heard a lot about it in the past. It's a really cute um 3D, but like so pixely looking world. You're just this little bird and you're on vacation, and you're really just there to like hike this mountain, but you have to kind of explore around and find money and buy these feathers that let you climb and jump higher. And you can play like volleyball on the beach a little bit. You can run around and dig for treasure. It's just like a really fun uh kind of like Animal Crossing, but even lighter than that, not as like contiguous of a goal or as customizable, just kind of a little fun here, play around in this world for a little while experience. So that was fun. And then I am planning a D&D campaign right now. We took a break because some members of our group got a new member of their house, so they've been, adjusting to the life of parents. So rather than jumping straight back into John's campaign, I was like, well, I always have a hard time kind of getting back into it after walking away for a while. Like maybe we could do something else for a little bit. And I offered to run a campaign because I had an idea kind of sitting in the back of my head for a while, and I just really needed to flesh out some of the details and run it for some people. So I was like, this might be a good opportunity to do that and give John and Thomas a chance to play together. And it's always fun to kind of mix things up. So I'm excited to do that. Just trying to get everything figured out. We're going to start that soon, so maybe I'll
You
talk a
said
little
nine.
about that.
Said 9 to 11 sessions. What you're thinking?
Yeah, 9 to 11 session is kind of what I've got planned. I mean, it could be a little bit less depending on how fast certain things go, but that's kind of my structure that I'm going. I've got a very kind of like beginning, middle, and end idea for this, and I think 9 to 11 will like pretty much bookend everything.
Okay, good stuff. Yeah, because I got to start planning on Strixhaven still, and I haven't. And you're talking about playing D&D. I'm planning a one shot right now, which I'm not going to say what it's for because certain people are listening. But um, yeah. So we're both in planning phase right now, and it's interesting.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it's nice to flex these muscles again. I haven't done DM like planning work for a while, and I got really into it. I mean, I've got one notes that are just like structured formats for like sessions and all kinds of world notes and stuff. So I'm not gonna like hound you guys on like lore and all that crazy stuff for just this little like this little adventure, but it'll still be
Yeah.
fun to kind of visit my world again.
That's honestly the big thing for me of like D&D. I'm not always a huge like lore person when it
Mhm.
comes to playing. Like if you tell me like, oh, the history of Neverwinter or Luskin or whatever it may be, I'm like, it's okay, cool. It's nice to listen to it every now and then. But like getting deep into lore of D&D is not exactly like my favorite thing. I love the storytelling component. I
You're
love
there to roll
interacting
dice
with
and kill monsters.
yeah, kill monsters, fuck shit up, and
Yeah.
mess around with NPCs, right? Like, but the NPCs I think are a big thing, right? Like, I enjoy more so interacting with NPCs within the campaign and just talking, right? Like that to me is just like the fun part is that, and then for me when it's later like late night playing D&D, sometimes I can kind of space out quite a bit, but the battles always get me back in. So
Hmm.
yeah. All right, let's go ahead and jump into our discussion topic for the week. So this week we're once again joined by Jim, the Grand Poobah and co-founder of Crit Hit, that is taking place in Mesa, Arizona, this July 6th and 7th. So next week, as far as this recording, or this week technically. Jim, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me back.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's been a
welcome again.
pleasure. So, Jim, the big question is: anything new to report on for Crit HitCon since we last
Uh,
talked?
yeah, I mean we're gearing up for it. We're putting the final touches on a lot of the stuff that we want to do. Like we're going to start plugging in all the panels into Congen, which is the web app that we use to manage the convention, so people can see what's going on there. We're finalizing things with vendors because there's a lot of vendors this year. I actually technically lost count, but there's a lot of vendors. There's a lot of moving pieces, and everything is slowly, starting to solidify and come together as we're making final plans for getting everything out there. So new things. I think we talked about Artemis, which was a big get last time. Um, uh, at this stage of the game, you don't really add a whole lot, but what you do is you start kind of seeing what people are doing to get ready for the con, and it's becoming very exciting. So yeah, we're in that like nervous but anxious, like ready for it to happen already. So
So before I jump into my next question, I have the website open, and we didn't talk about this, but it's not a curveball. Don't worry.
sure.
The name Crit Hit 6 Spicy Weather. Where does spicy weather, like, what's the reference there? I just gotta ask.
So Crit Hit 1 was just Crit Hit, and then starting with the second one, I was kind of forced with the decision of like calling it Crit Hit 2017, which is kind of the standard for a lot of Arizona conventions. You just go by the year, or you give it a number, right? And so I went with a number because I thought that was more interesting. And I thought it was funny that it was like, like a sequel. It looks like a sequel, like Crit Hit 2, And so I was joking around with that about how it's like a sequel. And I decided on like a theme to be Savage Summer. And it was also, I didn't think the first one would go off. And I was like, all right, we're gonna do a second one. And I thought, okay, I'm not gonna do a third one for sure. Like people are gonna catch on that this is, a ridiculous idea, and somebody's gonna go like, you don't know how to do this, and kind of shut me down somehow. And so I shot for the moon. So a big reason that Crit Hit exists is because I got into Savage Worlds early on, and that was such a big influence on me as a gamer. That was the first step towards eventually doing these conventions. When I found out that Shane Hensley, who's the creator of it, lives here, I was like, oh my God, like I'm gonna have to run into him eventually, and I never have. So I reached out to him and finally said, hey, we're doing this little convention. Would you mind coming out? So he said yes. So I called it the Savage Summer, and that even sounded more ridiculous and more like a movie sequel. And so we kept going with like this idea of themes every year.
Okay.
And so like the last one that we did was 4, pre-pandemic was 4, and that was supposed to be like Cthulhu themed and stuff. So when we got to post-pandemic, I said we're going to reset. We're going to do kind of one more convention proper, and then we're going to move on to like some other iterations of Crit Hit that I wanted to work on that me and my wife both wanted. And so we called it 0 because we said if it's going to reset, then we're going to start from 0 again. And plus, during the pandemic and post-pandemic, we've been playing Mutant Year Zero as our home game, all the iterations of it. And so I just wanted to do an homage to that. So we would do that. So when it finally came around that we're going to do 6, or they're going to do another one, I wanted to bring back, a theme. And originally it was going to be hell themed. Like we wanted to do hell, right? We figured we'd have like, D&D campaigns like the Avernus?
Avernus, yeah.
Avernus, yeah.
Yep.
And a bunch of like that kind of stuff, right? And then, we were going to go one direction and we didn't quite manage to get it together in time for this year. So next year, we're going to announce some things about the structure of Crit Hit. But I kind of was like, well, we probably shouldn't use hell if we're going to kind of transition to a family friendly kind of thing. Like some people might be weird about that, even though it's funny because it's supposed to be a reference to like how hot it is here.
Yeah.
And so I just decided that like spicy weather was kind of a funny way of saying
hot weather.
Yeah. And it's also a little bit of a double entendre, which kind of goes with sort of the punk ethos that I've always kind of like had, where it's like you're never really sure if it's like, is it what you think it is or is it something else? And so that's kind of where that came from.
Nice. Definitely
just
like
stupid
that.
silly ideas that I like. I should really not be allowed to.
As you were talking, I'm like, spicy weather has to be a reference to heat for sure.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It is. Yeah. And like we were throwing around ideas, and I wish we would have got it together, like of doing basically like Hot Ones style challenges with like hot sauces and stuff like that. Yeah.
Nice.
We thought that would be fun, but we couldn't get it together. Doing so many conventions back to back really kind of hinders a lot of that creative process.
That would have been nice.
But so unfortunately,
spicy food.
Yeah, but spicy weather. Yeah, and it just 6 was good. And that was it. Is because I think my wife Crystal was joking about doing something with the logo where it's like 666, and that's kind of what led to it, or something like that. Because we said it's going to be Crit Hit 6.
You would have had to do it in June 6th.
Yeah, actually, yeah, June 6th. Crit Hit 6. That would have been. Yeah,
that was a talk.
Missed opportunity.
Yeah, but with the convention in March, that would have been.
That would have been brutal.
Yeah. Plus, we like being on the 4th of July weekend.
Mm-hmm.
One for me because like I used to really, really like 4th of July. It was one of my favorite holidays. Like, you get to hang out with your friends all day and like have food and stuff and then watch stuff explode at night. Like, that's great. Um, since I've lived in Arizona, I can say I do not enjoy 4th of July like at all anymore. It is like probably one of my least favorite holidays. Only because I do not do well hanging out all day outside when it's,
Yeah.
105. Like, I'm can't.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was
Well,
so mad because I would try and like go see all these fireworks shows when I got here. And like every time I'm like bordering on heat exhaustion, like I'm miserable the next day. And I was so mad, like, of like, you took a holiday that I liked, and I don't like very many holidays, and now you turned it into something that I cannot attend. And so I was very upset about that. So
Yeah, all that
4th of
cooked
July
salt.
weekend's great.
yeah, my neighborhood sounds like a war zone during 4th of July. It's yeah, it's like the whole sky's lit up almost. It's
You're
crazy.
saying, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, and the fireworks, they start and they go on forever. Like, probably start hearing them this week and
Oh no,
probably
I heard
hear 'em
mine last
next
night.
month after.
Yeah, they started last night for us here. So
Yeah, that doesn't bother me. Just not being outside is what bothers me. So,
yeah,
yeah. So we both like 4th of July weekend for the convention. We think it's
nice.
plus I think it allows people to kind of have a day before or after off usually where they can kind of
Yeah, well, folks
chill
are
and
off
stuff.
anyways, right? So
Yeah.
with the early weekend and all that good stuff, so it
Mhm.
makes sense.
Yep.
Okay, so now onto my original question, and then Ryan, I'll throw it to you for the others. Is there a particular vendor, or just like if in terms of vendors, like what can people expect? Like, what are you looking forward to the most as far as what's going to be there
Sure.
this year?
So we have more vendors, I think, than we've ever no, not than I think. I know for sure than we've ever had. So it is a big number. It's somewhere like in close to 40. We had to have a couple that dropped out last minute for various reasons, but about 40 vendors. It's free to attend. You don't need a badge. You can just show up and shop, which is really cool. Um, last year, this is I'll tell you guys. You guys want the dish on, and I'm sure John, you can relate to this. The dish on like convention running, right? And I've never been shy about this. Um, the thing that I do not like the most about running conventions is dealing with hotels. Like, I really do not like dealing with hotels.
It's the
And
worst.
yeah, and it's just because they're not set up for conventions. Like, they have all these spaces for conferences and stuff like that, but it's like that's more geared towards business uses. And so, one, they charge way too much money for a lot of things, and it's very complicated. But this hotel has been the absolute best. Like, it is like this hotel is part of the reason why we're still even considering doing Crit Hit. Because it's been such a joy. It's the first time that we've had a hotel that we can't wait to do the next event there because we like it so much and the space is so great.
Yeah, it looks like they have an atrium or something in the middle,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's a big atrium. And that's where all the vendors will be. And it's a very cool setup. The bar is right in the middle. Credit has like this tradition of like we meet up the night before at the bar because all your adventures start off in the tavern. But there's as great as this hotel has been, there's always something, right? There's always something, like there's always a catch somewhere, and everything has been like literally a joy. Like I'm not just like sucking up to the hotel. Like, I cannot stress how good this hotel is to us, right? They've already like gone above and beyond for stuff. Like, they gave us a deal, like a really sweet deal. We had a GM appreciation party a couple weeks ago. So if you were a GM and you signed up, come up to the hotel. We had the suite. We had pizzas and games. We just kind of hung out and everybody just socialized for a couple hours. It was a lot of fun.
Cool.
But their thing is their I don't know what you call it, but like their floor planning software that they use to like map out their spaces is fucking horrible. It is so bad. So they sent me measurements and diagrams, and we went back and forth on how to set up some of the rooms. We had a room for vendors, and according to their schematics, right, their layout, everything was going to be perfectly fine. And we showed up in there, and it was not fine. It was off by a lot. So like I basically had to make it up to one vendor and basically move them out. It was very cramped. It was just not a good experience. And it was, yeah, I was not happy about that.
Yes, event planning software is key for some of those things. Like I used to run it out of a conference center, and so they had the appropriate software to kind of, X amount of chairs is this
Oh
size
yeah.
and it fits. It was fantastic. But
Yeah, no, this is not that.
yeah,
So that went really poorly last year. So this year, I took that same room and I basically gutted it. There's going to be a total of 6 vendors in one room. And the deal with that room is that it's supposed to be like a demo room. So if you have like something related that's, you need some space for. So every vendor has their own round table and chairs that they can run demo games or demo
that's
their
smart.
stuff, or do whatever they want with that space. So it's a demo room. So it's not any one vendor that I'm particularly excited about, because there's a lot of really cool ones out there, like stuff that I am just amazed that we even have locally. Like there's a soap maker coming out called Lather for Initiative, like all kinds of cool stuff. But having a room where vendors can sit and demo games and show off some of their wares. Like one of them is does like miniatures and stuff like that. So I think they're going to show a lot of that stuff.
Cool.
Yeah.
So for other stuff going on, I mean, you've got demos. There's going to be all kinds of things. Are there going to be like any contests or like cosplay or anything like that?
Yeah, so there is. So we're going to have some cosplay contests. One of them is going to be for kids. So if there's any kids that have like a little cosplay that they want to bring, we're going to do a little contest for them. We're also going to do one for adults, but we wanted very specific restrictions on it, and not in the way that most people think. Our restriction is going to be, it has to be RPG or board game related. It has to be tabletop related. So you can't show up as like a pop culture character. You can't show up as, a video game character, which is like what a good chunk of cosplay is, right? But if you want to show up as your character in D&D, you totally can, right? Because D&D has evolved into this culture where there is a segment, as you guys know, of people that like, that's their gig. Like they like to dress up as their character. And some of those over the years I've noticed have gotten more and more elaborate. So I think that that's really cool. So it gives an opportunity for people who I feel normally, I watch some cosplay contests at other conventions, and you always have those people that have kind of like their own homebrew costume, and they're really good, but it's not the same as like, whatever the latest pop culture thing is where somebody comes dressed as that, right? Like, so I want to do something that was tabletop related and gives an opportunity for those people to kind of show off their stuff.
Cool. Well, I look forward to checking that out. Have you ever done cosplay or anything yourself?
A little bit. My wife is the only person on the planet who's got me to do weird stuff with my appearance, which is weird because I grew up like goth and punk, so I already looked weird to begin with. Like that's how I grew up, was weird. But my wife is a special person who somehow has inspired me to do stupid things like have matching outfits and stuff as couples and shit like that. Like stuff that's just totally ridiculous. Yeah, but she's also got me. Yeah, she's also got me to dress up. So I have done some cosplay. Like I've done like Negan, and there's something else that we did too. There's a couple of ones that we did.
I can see you pulling off the Negan.
Yeah. Negan was fun because it's a bearded old guy, so that works.
Yeah, she's gonna have a barbed wire baseball bat in your set.
Yeah, I was done. Yeah. She dressed up as the baseball bat, which was kind of fun. She wore like a little tight dress and had like barbed wire. So she was a SEAL. But yeah, and so we actually have some. We did for a horror convention. It was right before Halloween, so we were already getting our cosplays together. And I had this idea, and we're still going to work on it some more. But we wanted to do Jesse and James from Pokemon.
Oh, nice.
If they were in the MCU.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
So like we took like military belts with like pouches and stuff, and like we wore like that black variant kind of stuff, and I wore like black BDU pants, and she wore like little like Tomb Raider shorts and stuff like that, and boots and stuff, and we try to make ourselves look as like militaristic as possible. Yeah, because that was the whole idea. Is like Jesse and James in the MCU. Like, what would they look like?
And just emblazoned still with the big red R.
Oh yeah, we have
right.
shirts with like the giant red R's on them.
Awesome.
I actually want to change that design a little bit to put like a texture on it, kind of like the Superman suit has like this texture. Yeah, so I want to make it look kind of gritty or something. So
nice.
Cool.
Ryan, you got the last question.
Yeah. So last question. Local game convention. What kind of local games can we maybe expect to see there?
There's going to be a couple of them. There's going to be some in the atrium area, demoing games, and then we're going to have people in that, like I said, a very specific demo room, where you can go and sit down and actually play and stuff like that. And we're going to do a couple of things where there are some demo games out that you can play in, and I have to find out. I don't want to say anything yet, but we're finalizing with a couple people, see if they're able to show up. But we're going to change the way that demo tables and publishers are handled, at least in Arizona. So we're starting it at Crit Hit, and we're going to continue it. I've already had discussions with the owners of Game on Expo, which is a more significant thing. In the past, if you go to most game conventions that are strictly game conventions, there is a taboo of, if you're a publisher, you don't sell games at your table. So I know from several firsthand accounts, I won't say which convention it is, but there is a big convention regionally that is tabletop based. And apparently some publishers literally got yelled at, they said. And these are different people who don't know each other. Were telling me like, no, they were very upset that, they thought maybe they were selling games at their demo table. That seems ridiculous to me because I know publishers, right? You don't make a lot of money on these things. Like you're making, I always joke that like you get into tabletop if you want to make tens of dollars. And so the idea of hindering a sale to anybody is just dumb.
Yeah, what reason do they have to show up at your event, right?
Well, yeah, and if you're there demoing and it's like, where can I buy this? Not here.
Sorry. Yeah, well, here's what happens, right? So you get somebody like me, right? Mr. ADHD, and like, oh, we're gonna get the game. They're like, oh yeah, it's in the vendor hall and table B40 blue. Like, what is that? I don't know what that is. I'll go look for it, then I'll forget what they said, and then I'll give up.
Yep.
And I'll go home and I'm like, man, I really wish I got the game. So we're gonna start. We'll see if we can get it, but some people are gonna actually have some tables out where they can play a game, demo it, and then you can buy it from them. Game on Expo, that's going to be actually a feature where we're going to have a set number of tables for those small publishers who can't afford to go to conventions generally because the prices of like, we get it, like even the owners of Game on Expo get it, like spaces are so expensive now that like it's kind of driving out some of those smaller publishers that have little games that they're self-publishing, and that's screwed up. So we want to do something about that. So we're going to be like, all right, cool, here's a game table, whatever you can cart in, like, and if you can have some stuff and it fits under your table and you got to cart it all out, you can sit there, demo it, and sell it at your table, make a couple bucks, get your game out there. So you might see a little bit of that at Crit Hit 6, and we're going to start it there, and again, continue it at Game on Expo.
Nice. Yeah, people seem to forget is like, it's not just a cost of table, right? It's, bringing in supplies, bodies, hours, all of that stuff that's tied in that really adds to that expense for the smaller publisher. So appreciate what you guys are doing with that.
Yeah, thanks. So we actually launched it. It was too late. Again, going back to back really kind of hindered us a little bit, but I'm going to leave it out there. I'll probably do like an official announcement like next week or something like that, like at Crit Hit or something like that. But going forward for Crit Hit, we're launching 2 initiatives for that kind of issue. So one of them is basically where GMs can volunteer to run games in the name of a store. So you basically become a champion of the store.
Okay.
And so for X amount of GMs, they get X amount of credit off of their booth. So in theory, a game store can have a free booth if enough people rally behind the stores, right?
Okay.
And I have this like grandiose idea about it of like that's kind of cool because then it becomes almost the opposite of what you want. It becomes almost tribalistic, right? Where it's like, oh, I'm gonna go run for this store, and like I want like banners and stuff, right? Like you like wave the banners for the stores, right? And that kind of thing. To make it really, almost a competition, I think would be kind of fun. Because different stores have different sort of vibes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's kind of cool to see all of that on display. So we're doing a thing starting next year where like if you're a game store, a local game store, you can have sort of champions. And yeah, so we're doing that. And then there's another one where stores and publishers can basically team up with GMs to demo their games for them, especially the ones that are out of state or they're really small, to facilitate those kinds of things. So sponsoring GMs and then also GMs sponsoring, or not sponsoring, but championing game stores. So those are things that are coming down the pipeline.
So Crit hit 7, the Warriors.
I like that. I might steal that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah,
everyone has like little glass bottles and just is chanting all the time. I love it.
Yeah, it'd be pretty fun.
For you younger listeners, that was a reference to a very old movie that geeks love.
Yeah, and then a little later they had a game that came out on PS2 as well.
Yes,
so nice little video game reference. Expensive game now, I think too.
Is it? Damn it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah, I'd have to look, but I know it's one that's sought after. So, Jim, before we let you go, can you update our listeners who are out of state, local? Where can they get their tickets? Where can they book their hotel?
Sure.
And some pricing, all that good stuff.
So everything is on crithitaz.com. So CRITHITAZ.com. So you can get tickets through there. I don't know if the link works for hotel bookings because I think they cut it off, but they did tell us that if they call the hotel and say they're showing up for Crit Hit, they'll get the hotel rate, which I believe is like $109 for the night, which is really nice. And then there's also a link on there to Conjun, which is the website / web app that we use to schedule everything, and that's where you sign up for games. It's very simple. It's the pride and joy right now of my existence and of Crit Hit and stuff, because we've had so much success with it, and we're only going to improve it. So it's a really good site to handle all that stuff for. So that's app.conjun.com, but the link's on the Crit Hit page that'll take you to it.
Sounds good. And then tickets, it looks like you got $50 for a weekend, $30 for Saturday, and $20 for Sunday. So that's still...
Yes, absolutely. Right. Sunday's worth it because we have did I talk about this last time? The mega game, the epic game. So we're having an epic game on Sunday.
Oh yeah, you had mentioned it, but I don't know if we talked about it on the actual recording.
Oh yeah. So we're doing an epic game on Sunday, which is going to be a crossover game with Transformers, Power Rangers, and G.I. Joe. There's going to be 4 tables, and you're in the same game. You're in the same campaign. You're just doing different parts of missions together, and one table's outcome affects the rest of the tables. So
super neat.
You have to work together, and it's going to be this big crossover game where there's, like I said, there's 4 tables, and then there's an overall GM that sort of is overseeing all of it and kind of managing what's happening with all the different things that's happening. So that's happening on Sunday. So that Sunday badge is really, if you can't make it out for anything else, come out for Sunday and get in that game.
Nice. All right, Jim. Well, it's always a pleasure to have you on. We'll have to have you on for just a D&D episode one of these days.
Oh man,
just to talk D&D and all the craziness tied to that. Maybe Pathfinder, because I recall, I think you played Pathfinder in the past, or you do.
No.
No. Okay. Well, maybe we could talk. I don't know. Maybe differences if you played it. Yeah. If not, we'll just go into D&D. Absolutely. And have a good episode around that. But it's been great talking to you again. We're looking forward to the event, so we will see you next week, and definitely continue spreading the word here. And looking forward to it.
Yeah, I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for everything.
All right, yeah. Thanks. All right, always good stuff from Crit HitCon. So definitely looking forward to that event next week. But let's go ahead and dive into our first article here, which this one came from me. It's Helldivers 2-player count has plummeted. And this is from Game Rants. Ed is Gunner. I think I've had this guy a few times now on my articles, if you've noticed the theme. So basically, Helldivers has plummeted from like 380,000 concurrent players to like 38,000 now, so 90% plummet since back in February, which is insane. But when you kind of put into perspective, Elden Ring had 1 million players at one point in time and now sits at 50,000, right? So like player bases fluctuate all the time. It's kind of concerning though, considering this is a live service game, which you would anticipate is going to have concurrent players like more so than Elden Ring, which over time is of course going to deplete players once they beat it. Whereas this game in Helldivers 2 should theoretically keep people going. So there's been a few theories passed around, and what I was reading in the article, which covers like, oh, well, because of the PlayStation Network connection requirement, that's having a lot of people drop off. Maybe it's because the game in general is just not good, whatever it may be. Like there's a lot of things factored in. But when I started getting into the comments and looking into like other articles out there and looking at comments that people have left, apparently there's a lot of bugs in this game and things that people have been complaining about for some time since February.
There's a lot of bugs in this game.
What's that?
One of the factions is all insects.
Okay, I didn't catch that part, but so pun not intended, but now intended. So there's a lot of errors in the game. Is there an error faction too? I just want to verify.
I don't know. There's robots, but I haven't.
Oh, they could have critical errors, so I messed up there too. So basically there's that. Like the players have been complaining about a number of things for quite some time. There's like caps apparently on like different weapons or levels, like different things that like people said, can you please like fix this? This is an issue. And Sony hasn't done that. So like, well, Sony and Arrowhead Studios.
It's a live service game. So, I mean, it's one of those things, it's never going to be a finished product. And really I don't know. I feel like such a fanboy for this game that I've never played it. And I hate reading this news that it's kind of like seeming to be on its way out almost, just as I'm maybe getting the tools to finally be able to check it out. But
yeah, I mean, I get that it's live service and like it's never going to be perfect. But at the same time, like if you're going to dedicate, as I think it's Arrowhead, I think it's the name of the studio, and Sony, like if you're going to dedicate, time to a live service game, you need to stay up with the times. And if your player base is submitting various complaints, like I get that maybe somebody had like one issue on PC, right? But like the PlayStation Network connectivity issue, that's an issue people have been flagging for some time. And it's obviously had an impact, or was a significant impact initially when that happened. I think it dropped 50% or 38% when that first happened. So you've already seen a player base drop because of that. Now they've got bugs, they've got, other types of errors, cap limits.
Like the PlayStation account linking requirement that pulled it from Steam.
That initially had an impact and
that really killed the whole following of the game for a while there. And I think there's still countries where like Steam won't let you purchase the game or something.
Yeah, so I think the player comments is probably the big one for me. Like there's obvious complaints, and like a lot of the comments I saw were the same things. So if your players are complaining and you're not actively fixing it, then you're going to see those players drop off and go into other games, because why am I going to support a game and try and play it if I'm not enjoying it because these things keep occurring for me, or it's not enjoyable because there's caps and things of that nature on character levels or building, whatever it may be. Whereas when I look at a game that we both used to play a bit, Apex Legends, and just kind of using that as a prime example, there were always things that were being fixed. There were always updates that you went across, and there was an active, like EA has an active bug submission forum. Not to say that other companies like Sony don't, but it felt like you were being listened to. And for example, I had an issue with where my connectivity was always dropping. Like I could never get into a game, I'd have to restart, whatever it may be. I submitted a bug complaint. They reached out to me and said, hey, let's troubleshoot this with you to see why you're not able to play the game. I'm not going to say Sony's not doing that or Arrowhead or whoever's not doing that, but to know that company was like, hey, let's see what's going on here and let's run some tests to see what might be occurring. They truly had like my interest at heart in playing that video game and making sure I was having a good experience. If you have players continually complaining and they're still complaining months later, that to me shows that you don't have an interest in supporting that player base. And so why are they going to support you in return, which 90% drop.
Yeah, no, that's very true. But I mean, I guess I just don't really have a whole lot else to say on it. I'm still hoping to check the game out. We'll see if Super Earth can survive.
Yep.
But
And I haven't played it either, so
yeah,
I can't. I'm talking more loosely about it, but just in what I was reading, that it makes a lot of sense. But
mhm.
go on.
So in another thing that we're talking about today, Sony is reportedly gradually stopping production of Blu-ray discs. This is by Johnny Flores Jr. at The Gamer. So what happens when, a store like Best Buy decides, you know what, we're not going to sell physical media anymore? Well, you go to GameStop, you go to Target, you go somewhere else, you order it on Amazon. What happens when Sony lays off 40% of the workforce that manufactures the physical media? Well, now that's a whole different kind of ball game we're looking at here. So the run to the all digital future, which if you're listening to this podcast, you probably are somewhat interested or invested in the future of physical games media. Um, that does not bode well for those kind of people that want to have their hands on the game. I mean, we've talked about this so many times, and how lackluster physical releases are now, and how sometimes games don't even get a physical release depending on the game itself. Um, but if Sony is just going to stop producing physical media like Blu-rays, then really the all digital future might be here a lot sooner than what we kind of anticipated. I think we all thought that we'd be safe for like another generation or two, perhaps. But it seems like things might be accelerating, and maybe this next generation is going to be the last physical, or maybe it won't even get that far. Who knows? Like the Switch itself has lasted for 7 years at this point, 8 years. So it'll probably be supported for like another couple, like maybe the last Switch game ever will come out like once it's on year 10. So 2030 might be perhaps like the last year you see a PS5 game. Like maybe after that they don't make PS6 games physically or PS7 games physically, if they even have a box, which we've talked
Yeah, I
about
mean it's
that too.
it's unfortunate. I mean, but that's the way things are going, and why I continue to buy physical media whenever I can, as far as video games are concerned. Dude, the amount of games I have, I know I'm not going to complete in my lifetime, but I have them physically, right? So as long as servers are up or there's some form of server down the road that'll allow me to play it, fantastic. And if it gets to that point where I can't even play those PS4 games and stuff because of server issues, well, I got my PS2, PS1, Nintendo 64, all that good stuff to play down the road as well.
John, you
So,
know what? You've got that Lord of the Rings Gollum. You've got that. That'll
oh,
always
I
be
definitely
yours.
do. And this isn't to say like I'm never going to play new games ever. Like if it goes to digital only, and that's the only way you can get it. I know in the past they said, "Oh, just boycott the damn thing." But like, if there's a point where you're not gonna be able to buy any physical media whatsoever, but you want to continue playing new games, well, you're kind of shit out of luck at that point, aren't you? So maybe it is jumping the backlog. Maybe we do a whole new podcast about just playing the backlog, and that's it.
Yeah.
The whole
I mean,
collection,
it
which
it
kind of
works
is this.
for, certain situations. Like I think that in the future when it's going to be all the kinks ironed out and you could just have like cross save, cross play, cross progression from like any device you have, and it's just like, you know, no barrier of like what do you have to play this game on. It's just like you could play whatever game wherever and it just works. Like I think everybody's going to have so much like availability for things to do that it'll be pretty overwhelming. I mean, it's already, beyond overwhelming at this point, but like when you don't even have to worry about, any of that anymore, it will be looking at a whole different future and all different probably kinds of game genres and, new studios pushing things and trying to get every, think about if you could appeal to every everybody the way Call of Duty does, but include the mobile gamers and the console gamers and the PC gamers all in one just open play environment.
Yeah.
It's going to be
You know,
bananas, and it's only going to work because they won't sell you an 8 Blu-ray disc game that holds a terabyte and a half of data on it.
theoretically, Nintendo could keep going though, because if they have chips, and I mean, you look at like micro SD cards and the amount of data that's held on
Already
those bad
put the
boys.
full game on the Switch carts because they don't want to pay for the next jump up in size.
No, I know.
Cost.
And that Nintendo, I think, will be the last one standing though, as it pertains to physical media.
For
Like,
sure.
I just see them being the last one for sure.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's
They hold their
dive
value,
into something.
too, more than anybody else's games.
What was that?
They hold their value more than anybody else's games too. Like,
Yeah,
they're
and
really
most
more of a commodity item than like a majority of the rest of games out there, and they're not always the most expensive games around, but
they're also not exactly the best games around either when it comes to graphics and things of that nature. So, I mean, if you want the best of the best, you're looking at, PC, PS5, and Xbox. All right, well, looking at something that is not the best of the best and probably shouldn't have had physical media, we're looking at Lord of the Rings Gollum. This is developed by Daedalic Entertainment, published by Daedalic Entertainment and Naken. It was produced by Harold Reigler, which he might not be producing anymore after dropping this. It was released in May of 2023, and it is an action-adventure game, loose on the adventure piece. So... Ryan, let's tell everybody what this game is about.
Yeah, so the synopsis is an accounting of Gollum's time in Barad-dûr between the Hobbit and the Fellowship of the Rings. The thing everybody was so curious about and chomping at the bit. We all wanted to see the Gollum story. We all wanted to see what happened when he was locked up in prison doing hard time under the watchful eye of Sauron, and me and John got to experience the very beginning of it. We actually didn't make it too far into the game.
We beat one chapter.
Yeah, there was a lot of bad platforming and weird looking character model for Gollum and not great stealth mechanics, and just overall it was a pretty rough intro, and we didn't even scratch the surface. Like, I went back after we played and I watched a skill up review, and he didn't even make it more than halfway through the game, I think, before he gave up. And it's just one of those games where it's just it's a weird concept, it's a poor execution, it's not really what you want to do. I mean, for God's sake, this is the telling of when Gollum raised some small bird creature while he was a prisoner. This game deserved better if we were being told these types of in-depth lore stories for
the stories that people want.
Fans. Yeah, this is what we're all craving. But no, seriously.
Instead, it turns out everybody's looking for Gollum and trying to betray him. You chase multiple bugs, and there's consequences to these choices too. You're given, in certain scenes, you're given choices as to whether or not you should be killing certain creatures, and I didn't even know what the hell we were doing during that period of time.
There's this whole mechanic in there where you have
the Smeagol and Gollum.
Smeagol Gollum argument to decide how things progress. But I mean, in a game like this, that's not a system that's going to be utilized to its fullest, because those types of systems are implemented in games that you want to replay. The other issues going on here, so later on in the game, parts we didn't even get to, like I said, there's a part where you have to like hatch this bird, and I guess it has all these crazy steps that you have to do in order, or you have to start over again. And then eventually you get this like human guy that you like boss around, like not Pikmin style, but like you're still Gollum, and you gotta like control the guy and tell him to go to different places and like hit levers and stuff. So it turns into this weird like babysitting control game halfway through.
So I have the unfortunate task of having this as one of my wife has already said that we're going to play this game. I'm kind of curious if she's going to give up with me midway through.
Has she done
So
that before?
she saw us play it.
No. Has
When
she given up on games? She's usually pretty tenacious with like, I'm going to play them in order from the beginning.
usually, except like Bloodborne, for example, she jumped in on that and she was like, nope, I'm good. Cause like it's just not her style of game. You know, like she just wants to kind of play a story to enjoy it. Like she's playing, as we're recording right now, she's playing Hogwarts Legacy, trying to 100% it. So I mean, that kind of shows you where she's at with
Oh,
games
man.
like that. She's actually at like 98%. So I would not be shocked if I walked out there after we record and she's 100% at it. So we'll
Nice.
see. Yeah, I know, it's pretty
Make
cool
that
actually.
platinum.
Yeah, for sure. But with this game, um, you know, one of the big things for me was when we had that stealth moment and we had to sneak up behind an enemy and we had to like sit there, and it wasn't a matter of, okay, cool, you're behind an enemy, you got to stealth and kill him, right? It was from a timing perspective in the game itself, we had to wait for that enemy to hit a certain threshold of time before it would even give us the ability to like stealth kill, which I found to be very odd considering it's like, hey, we're going to get up behind his character and press triangle. Well, we got up behind him and we died like 5 times because it just was not working correctly
Yeah.
until we realized, oh, we got to wait like 10 seconds for the game to progress.
Just some script that wasn't obvious.
Yeah, I know at one point, one of the things that bugged me was the running up walls just felt like very odd
Weird.
mechanically. Like, yeah, it was just very weird.
You guys know Lord of the Rings when Gollum was a free runner?
Yeah, right. Dropping from ledges. I know there was like one like this one kind of bugged me too. Like we dropped from a ledge which was not very high and Gollum died, and then it restarted us like God knows where at that part of the game. We're like, wow, that sucks. Okay, so we got past that one
At this
ledge.
one place like 8 times, and we
Yeah,
died at like very, very different increments.
it was the weirdest thing. And then like that one time, like we finally passed that ledge and we got like pretty good amount of time through the game, and then it put us right back at that very beginning section that we had died initially. It's like, whoa, what the hell? Like,
Yeah.
it should be like, you know, obviously auto saving at certain
At least
points.
we
So
could skip the cutscenes and stuff.
yeah, that's true. That's true. But then there were certain things like, you know, obviously you have to, the Gollum voice acting is horrendous in this
It's
game.
weird.
It is horrible. At least Gandalf was all right, you know,
Yeah.
listening to his voice acting. But then you're listening to the orcs talk, and the orcs sounded like just normal military guys. Like there was like no effort put whatsoever on the orcs to like sound like orcs. It was just, you know, I think one of the orcs fell and it just sounded like a guy in a normal video game just dying, right? So I was like, that doesn't sound good at all. So yeah, I mean, the game itself, I don't think it's terrible. Like, I don't think it's the worst game ever created, but I haven't played enough yet to be like I know it's bad, but I don't think it's like worst game ever. I think I got to put some more time into it to make that determination if it's like really just something you should 100% avoid. But if you're a fan of Lord of the Rings and you want to hear somewhat of a story that's tied to it that you didn't get to hear before, this might be your game.
You know,
Just let's get into brass tacks, I guess, and then we'll kind of determine if it's that person's game.
yeah. So complete inbox, this will run you $14.99. That peaked at $33.11 back in June of 2023. That's holding steady. Loose copy run you $13. That peaked at $31.14, also in June of 23. That is also holding. Digital on the console will still run you full price $60. Digital on PC $49.99, but it is on sale right now on Steam, 70% off for $14.99. And all of those are too much for this game. If you want another classic you know, adaptation of another media form, I cannot recommend the Blues Clues video game that I played a few years ago enough over this game. That is a much superior product.
I mean, if you had to put Miss Spider's Tea Party, which we also played together at one point in time, versus Blue's Clues, which one is a better adaptation there?
Blue's Clues is... I'm saying Blue's Clues is way better than Gollum here, man.
Oh, well, I know, but is Miss Spider better than Blue's Clues or better than Gollum? I mean, it's just...
No.
You know.
Miss Spider is... She's down at the bottom. She's under Gollum.
Oh, really? Okay. So, I mean, we have our levels then, for sure. So if you enjoyed our episode like 10, I think it was like episode 10 that we did that one.
Did you know
where we
Miss
played...
Spider is actually featured in Lord of the Rings.
That is true.
Giant spider. That is Miss Spider.
Oh, so Miss Spider evolved over time. Yeah. Yeah, the puzzles were so difficult that Miss Spider got very angry and turned to, Barad-dûr and live there moving forward. All jokes aside, this game is definitely inflated at $15. I think I picked up my copy. I don't remember now. I think it was like $5. I think.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, I think it was 5 or 10, one of the two. But I would never put $15 towards this game ever. So definitely inflated, which is probably a first for a game that's just a year old. To be
Right.
like it's inflated at $15. I don't think we've ever done that. So yeah, that is Gollum in a nutshell. I couldn't find a pun right off the bat.
Yeah, we need to come up with our list and make our announcement for next month.
We do. Yeah, so we will announce that on social media. Oh, well, we kind of talked about what we're doing. So we're going to be playing fighting games. That's the idea. I just have to come up with a list of fighting games for us to play. I forget which ones we had on that list, but I've got a few.
Will be Marvel vs. Capcom 2. I got really excited at that announcement for the re-release of the games, and I've always thought that it was a really cool looking game, but I've never played, so I am excited to check it out.
Yeah, have we ever played Fatal Fury? I don't remember if we did.
I don't know.
We'll look through
all our
I got lots of fighting games actually, so we'll definitely go through there. We've got like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fighting game too. I don't think we've ever done that one. So we're gonna look at fighting games spanning multiple generations of consoles, and we'll come up with a nice little list, and we'll play that in the month of July. So it'll be a nice fun month of fighting games. But until then, this has been episode 293 of Game Deflators Podcast. My name's John.
I'm Ryan.
And thanks for listening.